So today I want to start off with lettering. And I've noticed in the past few years that lettering tends to be a weak point with many people who land up doing my class. All this reflects only when we do something like travel illustration, which we are going to do next month. So in travel illustration, often we will write stuff in a journal. I'm going to show you the travel journal I'm carrying. And everyone's illustrations look more or less okay, but the moment lettering comes into it, they feel the quality goes down. And it's inexplicable. People who feel that their lettering is really good and they're proud of their handwriting also feel that it's not the same as when they see travel art in or travel journals on the net. So what I figured was that there is a certain set of rules which we are not familiar with because we are not trained in lettering and typography. What we are trained in is just functional writing. There's a difference in how this writing works. We know how to send letters mostly. We know how to write official letters. We know how to convert words that are spoken or ideas that you have into words that are spoken into a certain format which is universally recognized for official purposes. But we don't know how to use these same letters for anything other than that. So, if we are going to make a poster, for example, we don't have a range of letters that we can use. If we, in that poster, if we have more than one bit of information that we want to give, we don't know how to create that hierarchy of information. We don't know how information is read. So when we make a poster versus when we see the exact same information made by a graphic designer, you look at it and you say, okay, why didn't I think of this? And the reason is because you're not trained. They are trained to think of these things. There's a lot of rules and regulations and principles of design that designers are trained to so that they are using letters to communicate differently. So I want you to see that there's a difference between what you write and what you learn in school to write and what you are going to do as lettering forms. So lettering is going to be like almost a part of your composition. So it is a decorative element. All the shapes that we see are going to be almost like drawing. They're not going to be words. So we have to approach creative lettering from a different point of view. The fact that whatever we make lands up communicating a thought or a word or an idea is just a coincidence as far as we are concerned. When designers do it, they are given a directive. So they would say, okay, this is a can of something or the other, and you have to sell this. But then they were told what is the age group of people. Then they'll think about what are the colors that they like, what are the kind of fonts that they like, why they like them, and therefore then they use them. So it's a very different approach over there. We are going to do it more artistically. What do you like? How do you want your artwork to be seen? And how can you make it different from every other person in doing the exact same thing? So I'm going to give you a little bit of a history. I think I have shared two documentaries with you last week. If I've not, I'm going to do that again. So one documentary is it's in two parts, two videos, which is called The Story of Writing, which is absolutely fascinating. I watch it whenever I get a chance because it's really, really dense with information. And the other one is the rebuilding of the Gutenberg press. That one was a documentary on perspective, BBC Perspective, made by Stephen Fry. So I'm going to show you that as well. Both are available on YouTube. So, why this history is important is because we are at the tail end of a certain discovery. And while everyone says the greatest discovery by humans was probably fire and the wheel, and not to take away from that, one discovery which nobody admits to or doesn't seem to find as important is actually invention of writing. Had it not been for writing, there would have been very little unification of people, very little sharing of culture, very little growth of civilizations. So, in terms of just development, sheer development by creating marks on a surface and then transmitting information over thousands of generations is a remarkable feat, and we should look at writing in that manner. So, writing the way we understand it, in terms of alphabets, in terms of symbols, is not older than about 3,500 years old. Before that, there was a whole lot of writing, but that was mostly pictorial, like you have the hieroglyphs, and also you have pictorial writing, which continues today, which is the Chinese letters. But what we are concerned with right now is called the Latin alphabet. So the A to Z that we write today is called Latin alphabet because that was used to write Latin, and it was devised in this form by the Romans, maybe around 250 years ago. Sorry, 2,250 years ago. So the Romans script came from the Greek script, which came from the Phoenician script, which came from the Etruscan script. So there's a very long line of fathers and grandfathers and great grandfather of the Roman script. But why the Roman script became so good and was adopted by so many people, and today, even 2,500 years later, it is still prevalent across the world, and to a large extent is responsible for creating this ability to communicate across the world, is literally because of its design and its intention. So around so the Roman Empire became an empire sometime around the turn of the first millennium. So around 100 BC or so was when it started becoming a really, really big empire. And by the time it fell, which is 700 years later, it had conquered most of the Mediterranean region. So everything from the middle of the United Kingdom all the way through Europe to Asia, so Turkey and close to Iran, what is called the Levant, and North Africa. All of that became the Roman Empire. Now, how do you keep the empire together? And one way of doing this by all ancient rulers, including people like Ashoka in India, was to create large stone edifices and write edicts on that, which was nothing but rules and regulations, and also information about who is giving this out, whose edicts you are reading, and how everyone has to live beyond that point. And these were written in a particular script that was that could be readable throughout that empire. So the script became the identity of the empire. Now, the Romans, I don't know whether they did it by design or whether it just happened out of sheer. I'd like to believe that there was somebody over there who decided this is how we're going to write stuff, and it is going to be beautiful. Embedded in the Roman script is such beauty, such a perfect proportion, understanding of space and lines. It's remarkable that these guys could do so well. But it's not surprising if you look at the art, architecture, sculpture from Roman times, it is absolutely exquisite. Very, very objectively speaking. They had a lot of things that were balanced. They had a lot of shapes that went into each other with such rhythm that everything landed up looking so much prettier just because of how things were put together. So I'm going to give you a sample of how those letters were made, and then we will do a little bit of variation of those letters using those same principles. So you start understanding literally the root of the Latin script. So let's
Good
begin.
morning, Aditi.
Hi, Madhushri.
Hi.
Okay, so we're just using paper, pencil, and our micron pens. Nothing too complicated, no colors or anything right now. Okay. All right. So let's begin.
No dip pen. No dip pen.
No,
Dip pen?
you can use the dip pen if you want to,
Okay.
because it's
Okay.
just writing with a regular pen. You don't have to use pressure. So use the dip pen, not a problem.
Oh,
Okay, so to start with, I want you to write your alphabet on the top left corner, just like you normally would. Maybe write it slightly bigger. I want us to contrast our regular handwriting to what the lettering becomes later on. Now, all these letters can be written in some form of a universal measurement. The Romans devised a measurement that was based on a square and a circle. So, start with making a square shape. Now you know how to measure this. Inside this, make a circle form. And don't worry about how many lines and all you make in this, it's not really important. And then draw a line across from both diagonals. This is our basic form, and we are going to divide this space into different measurements and fit all these letters into this shape one way or another. So the other things we will do is cut the square in half so we get two rectangles. And then we're going to join a line between this intersection, which is the intersection of the diagonal and the circle, from the top left to the bottom left. So we get one vertical that slims down the square. So in this we have three different forms already, three different measurements. We have one square, that is the first form. Then we have half the same square, that's the second form. And then we have this measurement, which is neither the rectangle or half square, neither a full square, it's somewhere in between. So we have shape 3. Okay, so I'm going to call this one the square, this one the half square, and shape 3 is just going to be called the rectangle. These are just terms that I'm using right now so that you know which one I'm talking, which shape I'm talking about. And we will have to refer to this extra space here. So I'm going to call this the sliver, sliver on the right and sliver on the left. I hate to have to say this shape and this point, so I'd like to give some terms just so that you know clearly what I'm talking about. Okay? All right, now let's make all the letters in this shape. So, what will we need for that? Let's make 4 squares with this grid in it. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Oh, slightly lower would do. Let's make that whole grid again, make the circle and make the diagonals. Okay, now that these shapes are ready, oh, one second. All right, now in these grids, let's start making the letter form. The first letters we will make will use up the entire square shape. So the most obvious shape that we have is the letter O. That fits perfectly within this square. Then on the bottom right corner, you can make a line that comes outward. It's slightly lower than the point where the diagonal crosses over. This is the Q. Then within this, if we just use the semicircle on the left and pull a line a little beyond and higher than the O, we get the C. So there are minor changes so that the letters don't look too regular. These changes are done mostly visually. Now, up to what point do we bring the arch of the C? It's exactly up to the point of this diagonal, not beyond that. And same thing at the bottom here as well. So they come one below the other. And we can also extend one line up to the middle, which will give us the G. So you can use that horizontal marker to know where the G will come. So we have C and G. And if we make a line on the left sliver, like this, and then extend a line out from the top, go all around the oval or the circle, we get the letter D. Okay, so these are the letters that fit in the entire square. This is shape 1, which is the square. Okay, the next shape is half square. So I'm going to be writing some letters on the left and some letters on the right and some in the middle. Let's also mark the slivers on the left and right with a dotted line. So here we are writing on the second shape, which is half square. So the letters that are written in half square are the letter L, if we mark across half horizontally, we also get the point where we will write the E and the F. So all of that just fits within this. We have three letters just working on the vertical and half horizontal. Then in the same shape, with the same measurements, if we make a semicircle over here, we get the letter P. And by manipulating this, sometimes the P can come a little closer, shorter. We can also get the letter P. Then the same point where the B has exited, the second bowl of the B has exited, we can make a line that is parallel to the bottom right part of the diagonal. You can extend a line outward to create an R and the leg of the R. So let me go over these letters again. You have L, E, F, P, P, R. Okay, are you all with me? If you all are nodding, I will not see it because
Yes.
thanks.
L-E-F-P, right? P. R.
Okay, right. So now in this same measurement, we will get the letter K. And K often will also follow this principle. The same line that you see for the R can be extended to make the K over here, or sometimes it will be made over here as well. So there are variations in certain letters, and depending upon which you prefer, you can make these changes. And then, of course, you have the letters I and J. Now, I and J, I write them a certain way. So I will use up this space in between. And the same J also, sometimes I can write like this, or it can come down as a descender. I prefer to not bring the J down as a descender. And in the Roman letters, I think it forms a shape like this, which we'll come to. And of course, we have the letter T, which can actually, we'll make it in the rectangle. So next was I, J, K. Okay, shall we move on to the rectangle shape now? The rectangle shape is right in the middle of the two slivers, right? So it's neither half a square, not a full square, but an odd size in between. And it seems really strange and an extra effort. Why would you bother to make this extra shape? Makes no sense, except if you are very particular about the aesthetic balance of the letters. So here again, I'm making a vertical and horizontal line at half of the square. And this shape will house letters like the A, H. So the H does not extend across the whole square. That looks too wide. So we fit it only in the center rectangle. Even the A becomes too flat. And the V. Look at how beautifully all these letters are just fitting into each other and creating almost like a monogram. Then we have the T over here. So just horizontal line across the top of the rectangle, vertical across the center line. If we join the top left to the bottom right, we get the shape of N. And if we join the top right to the bottom left, we can visualize a Z. And everything matches each other.
What about M? Does it go
No, M is
until
not.
the back?
No,
Okay.
M and W are on their own. I'm going to show you those
Okay.
last one.
Okay.
So in this shape already you can see the Y. We already have a Z. So I'm going to write the letters that we've created in this shape. You have A, H, V, N, Z, Y, T, and if we bring a line from the left and right to about the same point where the sliver is created, and you create this oval shape at the bottom using the circle, you get the letter U. So we have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 20, 21, 22. Now in this last box, of course we have the square, we have the circle, we have the diagonals, and so we have these slivers on the side. Let's extend this further by just the measure of the slivers again on the left as well as the right. So this is a fourth shape, which is the expanded square. And we are using this so that we can accommodate the extra lines that we have in the letters M and W. All these shapes are accommodating the different lines. So for M and W, one might think write M one way, write W the exact opposite way, and that should do it. But again, I think the Romans don't do it that way. It has to look good. So the first part to write an M is making the V shape. And to extend this line, bringing it right to the end of the square kept the line too upright. So you just go a little beyond the square, but not all the way. And that was good enough for M. But for W, you went all the way out. And made it a much wider letter. So those of you who write an M like this and a W like that, this was often the case in schools when we were taught writing in print. The M and W was made with this very small or short wiggle in the center. This has to convert to a big zigzag shape. So widen your M's and W's. Don't keep them upright, widen them so that they can accommodate the um, the triangular shape inside better. If you try to do it with straight lines, it looks really odd
Mhm.
and very crowded. So just stretch them out at the extremities and they look much nicer. Alright, so this gives us M and
I
F.
have noticed this a lot, Aditi, while I was doing M and W. Even N, I guess. N also.
No, N, if you fit it in this measurement, it works well.
It works well, yes. Yeah. And this structure, what you gave, right? It's a kind of grid, right?
Yes.
If you create logos, I've seen a lot of designers who create logos, they use this as a structure base.
Yes.
And with this, they'll have like a couple of alphabets and create one logo based out of this.
Exactly. It's very easy to do it once all the letters come
Hmm.
from that same origin. So one letter missing is the letter S. That we will put in half the rectangle, sorry, half square. So you can just make a shape like this, and instead of going straight down, well, actually, we could go straight down. So you have this form and you have this form. And you can modify this further and make this go a little more uh, slimmer and more slender. So 5, 10, 15, 20, 23, 24, 25. Why is one letter?
I also I also noticed one more thing. S also the way you write S, right? The top curve is little smaller than the bottom one.
Yeah, it can be. Even for B, it can be.
Yeah, me also.
L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S.
X is missing.
X is missing. Yeah, so X will be here in the rectangle shape. So when we practice Roman letters, you can literally practice this on one shape alone. So try writing it over and over in this one grid.
Where was the X again? Can you show the X?
Yeah, the X is in this half in the
Oh,
rectangle. The X and Y are often also written in the half square, but I prefer to write them a little wider.
mhm.
Okay, so now we have this grid. Make all the markings. So you mark the slivers, you mark the vertical half, horizontal half, and you don't need anything more than this. And literally you can start practicing your letters on this grid. So you start off with A, and you can do this in colored pens also. A, B, C doesn't follow the whole circle, just a little higher from the circle on the right and a little away from the circle on the bottom right. D, oh, sorry. D follows the circle. Then you can consume the other half of the square to write the E, F, G, H, I will be in 1/2, so I will be here. J will be like this. K, or here, we can write K here. L is again in 1/2. M, N, O, P, Q, R already is there, S, bottom is already there, T, U, the J creates one side of the, oh no, the U has to go beyond there, sorry. V is already here, W, so go to the other side of the sliver. X, and in creating the X, we have created the Y as well and the Z. So any alphabet that fits in a kind of grid like this, where all aspects of the letters fit in a grid like this, these can be manipulated very easily to create a lot of graphic lettering text. So let's test out how this works. Now suppose you want to write a word. Each of these blocks or letters can be written according to their shape, and we can decide on how much space we want to leave between these blocks, and we should get an evenly spaced letter. So what if we write the word good, because that fits within 4 squares. So you have 4 squares, and first start off with making the first square and leave about 1 sliver space between that square and the next one. And in this case, we can just go ahead and make the squares with that much space in between. Now, what we are writing on, we have a baseline. This is the line on which the letters are going to sit. And we have a cap height, which is the height of the capital letters. A cap height is not just called the height of the letters because in this case we are writing capitals, but we when we move to what are minuscule letters, we will have an X height. And I will speak more about that in later classes when we are working with minuscules. Okay, so let's mark all of these with the grid. The O's don't need it, but the G and the D need the slivers marked as well.
Aditi, I have a generic question,
Yes.
maybe stupid, but so when you're using a pencil to measure like a square, right? Like you want to measure, you want to make sure that the length and the width are the same. Using a pencil, so how do you use the pencil to put the next mark? Like for example, you put a horizontal, um, like you measured something horizontal like this, and then you want to use that same thing to measure something vertical. How do you put a mark uh, at the bottom of the vertical thing? You get what I'm saying? Because you,
I use my finger to measure. So this is the end of the pencil, right? So I will hold my pencil like this, and then
Mhm.
I will keep my pencil like here, and just
Mhm.
actually just keep my finger and put a dot there.
Okay, okay,
That's all.
okay. Thanks.
No problem. So for G, now you know the structure of the letters, so it should be pretty easy. It goes all around the left and then comes up to half mark. The two O's are just all over the circle, and the D comes on the right. See, quite easily we have good balance. Shapes make a lot of sense, and the logic is very sound. So, what happens now when you have letters which are not all in the same grid? We have some that are slimmer, some that are wider. So, in that case, all you do is mark the measurement of whichever letter you have to write first. So, say we want to write the word mad. You do start off with the square grid. Mark the slivers so that you know where the M is going to come. And then you know the end of the letter itself, which is somewhere here. Then after this, you have to make space for the A. So A has to begin here, which means that the space we have left measuring a sliver is also going to overlap between the first and the second letter, right? So a second letter has to fit in such a way that the grids are going to overlap a little bit, because if we put our A like this, that means we are going to keep some extra space. Remember, the A has extra space on the side. It is not accommodated in the full shape. So you have to place the A next to the M in such a way that it does not create extra space. And then again, this will be here, there won't be an overlap because immediately after the letter A, we can put a box, a square for the D. And we don't know how this is going to work because the D also has some extra vacant space on the left. So maybe it'll help if we shifted the D a little to the left as well. Can you see what I'm doing here? There are certain overlaps that will come. Now, once that is done, then you can very carefreely write the letters and you know that they will be balanced. Is it here? No, it's here. Okay, do you want to try a few words yourself? Try writing your names.
So one question I have,
Yeah.
Aditi, um, for half letters, right?
Uh-huh.
Um,
These.
yeah. I think I'm not sure if I have the question anymore. Actually, so let's say, for example, if there are like two L's, so I would use like a half box,
Mhm.
and then I would leave some space, and then another half box, right? It's not like I would use the entire box, use half of it for L, and then you leave some space, and then use an entire box, and use half of the other box for L. You get what I'm
Oh,
saying?
no, you don't. So you can just use.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
So, say if you want to write um, the word ILL, which is all
Mhm.
half boxes. You don't have to write the full, you don't have to make the full box.
Got it.
So
Okay.
long as you know that the proportion is 1 is to 2.
Yeah.
So we write this, you know, it's just the I is going to fit here, the L is going to fit here,
Yeah.
and then you make it in that. So you have I, L, and L. The purpose of explaining how the grid works is for you to understand that there is something like a grid when writing letters. And this kind of strict following of the grid is done if you're going to make something like a sculpture. You're going to etch these letters, and especially only in this font, then you would do it like this. But once you know this, you also start seeing letters in their various most aesthetic shape. So when you want to modify this and create something of your own, you know what would be the best space distribution for the letters. So say for example, you want to write your name. Um, you don't have to now necessarily leave all these shapes, so create all these shapes. But you would know how much space you would need. So if I have this line in which I want to write my name, I decide that I want to write it at a certain height. I know how much space more or less I will need in terms of width, and I will leave space for each of the letters according to that proportion. So I will leave a little more than a rectangle or half square for the A, an arbitrary space between A and D, almost a square shape for D, thinner space for I, D, and I. So you see how this already helps me visualize my letters without having to really make the boxes. And this is what we are going to do. We are not going to go this formal. So how will this help? Suppose you want to write the name of a city that you're visiting, or just a happy birthday to somebody. You can just create the letters. Like, let's say if you want to write happy birthday, first you can write the word birthday because it's longer. You want to fit that in first. B fits in half square. I in half square. R, T, H is slightly wider. D is much wider. A and Y. So let's write these letters. Birthday. Okay, so already this is looking very nice. Now, if you want to write the word happy above this, you don't look at the letters anymore. You look at the space you have and the space that happy is going to use up. So if we divide the letters in half, then the half line would come somewhere over here. But that is not exactly the midpoint of the word birthday, because H and D use up more space. I, R, T, all of these use a little less space. So if you align your happy to this center between T and H, it's going to be a little skewed. So we need to cover the letters, measure the distance between the end of B and Y, and figure out what the actual half mark would be. And that is where we will align our happy. So once we get this center point, then we will make our measurements on both sides from the center, not from the left, but from the center. So the letter P will come in the center, which is half square. A will come on the left, which is rectangle. H is rectangle. On the right again, P is half square and Y is half square. And we risk the possibility of having the right side be slightly slimmer than the left side. And if you know it in advance, then you can shift the letters to the right or left, but because of the right reason. And actually, you don't even have to go through all that trouble. Just manipulate the letters a little bit. This should be pretty good for a happy birthday card for a beginner. Okay, are you getting this? Okay, any questions so far?
No, this is good.
Okay. All right. Now, suppose we want to write happy birthday to somebody, but we want their name written on a curve. These curves we encounter very frequently, either like an arch like so, or maybe even in the form of a banner like this, which would probably fold. So we create a lot of drama by changing the baseline. But I found often that the moment you shift baseline, it can get a little confusing how to fit the letters. So here's a simple rule. These letters fit on a curve like bricks on an arch, literally. You must have seen these arches frequently. So let's say we have an arch like this. Ignore the pencil line. In order to create arches, they actually built a form in wood on top of which they start laying bricks. So you will start with bricks on the left. The brick is always rectangular, and each brick is positioned flat on its side on the arch, which causes there to be a little extra space towards the side where the arch opens up, the convex side. So this also will remind you of our fingers. They are attached onto an arch of these bones and they spread outward, creating extra space towards the extremities. We use the same logic for letters as well. We have to position each letter on the baseline in such a manner that it appears on the perpendicular. Okay, so tomorrow of one of my friend's birthday, it's one of my friend's birthday, her name is Chitra. Suppose you want to write the word Chitra here. Let's first figure out how many letters we have and what form they're in. So when you're writing this now, you can write it in that measure. C will be rounder, H will be less, I will be thinner, T will be as wide as the H, R will be slimmer, and A will be slightly wider. So automatically, even when you're doing a rough lettering sketch, you will start making these shapes a certain way. Let's divide this in half. So I will now make a half square over here in such a way that the letter I is standing perpendicular at this point, not on all over. Then leave some space. Mark a square such that the H sits perfectly on the perpendicular. So this is that rectangle shape 3, and C will fit in a square. So you see how the letters, the baselines are actually straight lines pretty much like the edges of the bricks. Once this is done, then it's so easy to make these letters. Okay, now do you want to try applying the same principle on the banner? Just try making some letters on the banner. Here, to give you some hints, we have a curve that moves in one direction and then the other direction. So you will have some letters which are converging on the top, then go straight, and then they will converge towards the bottom. Are you able to see how the perpendicular line shifts as it goes across the curve? When we write these letters really thin, they don't really make an impact. So I'll show you how to fatten these letters up now. Okay, after making the letters on the banner, you'll probably realize don't draw the banner before you make the letters. Don't make the final shape of the banner in ink. After the letters are done, it's so much easier because you know how much space you want to leave. Funnily enough, even to write casual letters, it helps to know how grids work. Okay, so I'm going to show you two ways to thicken these letters. One is just following the Roman principle. Roman letters were first written using a brush, which you'll see in the documentary. So you would take a flat brush and you would write the letters at a height of about 11 brush widths, which is the width of the tip of the brush. And then that brush would be held at an angle of 15 degrees. So the edge of the brush is held at 15 degrees. This is only for you to know. I'm going to demonstrate in the last class how to do this, because this is one of those practices that needs a lot of dedicated work to master. So you maintain this angle of the brush and you draw a line to the left, and the same angle you will draw a line to the right. So you get lines of different thicknesses. So say for example the letter A, which we have written right now in a monoline. Monoline is a line which has just one regular thickness throughout. The left side of the letter is say about 1 unit thick, and the right side is about 2 units thick. These are just approximations, which is fine at this stage. And then you can make a serif, which is a line at the bottom, not at the top, and you turn the corners and round them on the sides. That gives you a beautiful serif. And a certain thickness to the crossbar, which is also made using that 15-degree angle line which is pulled across. So this would be something like a classic Roman A. Then there are two different ways in which you can add thickness. So if we have some lettering like this which you want to make bold, you can take the letter and create a skin around it. So these are informal ways of making lettering, which I have written in my book. So you learn to have fun with letters. So we have something like this, which gives us thickness. It's just a uniform thickness throughout, and we can manipulate that thickness based on what we are trying to say and create a different shape. So if I want to create a much more dramatic letter, I can just increase the distance of the line from the original skeletal form and create a much fatter letter. So it becomes even more emphatic. So in my book, there are like 125 different variations of how you can make these letters. And now on Happy Holi, we can do the same, just make an outline across the entire letter. Sorry, around the entire letter, across the entire banner. And then you will have created a good poster with letters which are bold, which can be read, which have been drawn to proportion, and have uniformly increased in size. This will never look bad. And I maintain, had we been taught writing for the beauty of writing, all of us would have become excellent lettering artists from day one. We were taught to write just so that we could become, what are they called? Pencil pushers. Filling in the holes in industry. We don't know how to create letters like these instinctively. Okay, how are your letters looking?
How do you do an S?
An S?
Yeah,
S in this form?
yeah.
Yeah, it's the same. So write the S like we would write the Roman S. So either you write it slender or you write it horizontal like this. And then you just make a line running across both sides.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That's it. So
Mhm.
always make the skin all around. Don't use the letter, the skeletal letter form as one of the lines for thicknesses, if you can help it.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.